Tell me one good reason why I should try continuing to fight it.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel at ito na nga po tayo. To those of you who want to go straight to the build guide, then there is a timestamp in the description of this video kung hindi kayo makapaghintay. So yeah, this is actually the second time that I'm recording this build guide since mainly I didn't like how the first one turned out. But yeah, hopefully this one is going to be better than the first one that I recorded. But yeah, most of you have probably bought new PC parts for your first build, your new gaming PC, or yeah. So yeah, we pretty much have everything we need on this table. This is actually only for if you mess up applying thermal paste on your CPU. So this is isopropyl alcohol, even though it says ethyl, this is isopropyl. And so basically, if you mess up applying thermal paste on your CPU, you can just put some isopropyl alcohol on a piece of tissue and just wipe down the thermal paste on your CPU. And the same goes for your CPU cooler. So yeah, these are again the parts that you're pretty much going to need. So I actually made a build guide about 2 years ago, and I use an Intel CPU there. So if you guys want to check that out, then you can click right here. But yeah, this is an AMD build guide. So we're using a Ryzen 5 2600. I was able to buy this for 6,000 pesos, which is an absolute steal. And regarding the CPU cooler, I'm actually gonna use the Rate Stealth that it comes with, since I was actually supposed to use this, my Cooler Master T2 Mini, but I already threw away the box that this comes with. So that had the AMD brackets. So yeah, that's kind of a waste. I think I might be able to get a bit cooler temps, better temps with that, especially for overclocking. So that might give me a little more headroom when overclocking. But ideally, you'd want an aftermarket CPU cooler. I'm not a fan of water cooling, so I'd recommend an aftermarket air CPU cooler. Anyway, but yeah, this will do for now. And I actually removed the pre-applied thermal paste on the Rate Stealth for the purpose of this video, so I can show you guys how to apply thermal paste. And our motherboard, which hopefully you can see the name. So this is the Gigabyte B450MD S3H. And actually a few things that I want to say, like design flaws on this motherboard, which I'll get to at the end of the video or a little later. And the I/O shield that it came with. So this is pretty much one of the cheapest, and yeah, I'm not sure if this is the cheapest, but this is one of the cheapest and I guess best value for your money B450 motherboards. And this is compatible with Ryzen 3 processors. Just make sure that the BIOS is updated so it can actually support a Ryzen 3 processor. So I was able to buy this for 3,800 pesos, which is a pretty freaking steal. For memory, we have two 8GB sticks of Team Group T-Force Delta RGB memory at 3000 MHz, giving us 16 gigs of memory. Was able to buy these for 3,400 pesos. Yes. And actually, according to Team Group, they have a lifetime warranty for this. So even though in the packaging it only says that it works with the Asus Aura Sync, so you can sync your RGBs with this, but I have actually tried this with RGB Fusion. It is compatible with Gigabyte RGB Fusion. For our graphics card, we have our Palette GTX 1660 Super Gaming Pro OC, which is very nice. And of course, I made an unboxing video and benchmark video for this, which you can also check out right here or in the description of this video. Was able to buy this for 12,900 pesos, which is a pretty good value actually. For storage, in my case, I have one 240GB SSD, one 2TB hard drive, and another hard drive which is 1TB. For our power supply, which I actually don't really want to show, these have really ugly ketchup and mustard cables, but this will do for now. I'm actually planning on upgrading to hopefully a Cooler Master MWA 650W power supply, which have flat black cables if I'm not mistaken. Or I might go for any fully or even a half modular power supply. So yeah. So this is the Cougar SL500, which actually has an 80+ white certification. So that's good for the most part. And another reason why I want to upgrade this to a better power supply, because again, I'll be planning on overclocking my 2600. Same goes for my GTX 1660 Super. And having a better power supply will give me peace of mind when overclocking. And of course, my advice when it comes to power supplies, never cheap out on your power supply, guys. And that's actually a good investment in the long run, especially if you're planning on upgrading your system to a high-end system in the future. So yeah. And of course, shout out to Rakk for providing me with their Rakk Haliya the white variant. So this is the mid-tower case. And same goes with these Rakk Pro. So we have 3 120mm case fans. These have RGB supported with Asus Aura Sync, MSI Mystic Light, and Gigabyte's RGB Fusion. So that's very nice. And it comes also with an RGB hub, a remote, and an extra cable for connecting it to your motherboard. And like I mentioned, since I'm going to be showing you how to apply thermal paste, I have here the Deepcool Z5 thermal paste. So, and pretty much the only tool that you're gonna need for building a PC is a Phillips head screwdriver. Mine has a removable magnetic tip, so if I need to change this to a flathead or whatever, then I can easily do that. And of course, a bootable flash drive which contains your OS of choice. And other optional parts are a magnetic parts tray, so you don't lose any of your screws, an anti-static mat or anti-static wrist straps, which are again optional. And of course, regarding static electricity, you can just easily discharge that by using your power supply. So this is in no way harmful to your power supply. So just simply plug in your power supply to the wall outlet, make sure it's not turned on, and just touch it with both your hands, and yeah, that's pretty much it. And yeah, that's pretty much all the parts that we need, and let's get started with this build guide. So my way of building a PC can vary from the other build guides you've watched. In my case, I first install my power supply and motherboard IO shield, and I think it'll be easier after that. So go ahead and remove the Haliya side panels and magnetic front panel. Now, since we do have a dust filter at the bottom, our power supply fan will be facing the bottom. Align the screw holes at the back and screw in using the screws that came with your power supply or case. Screw it in a cross pattern and you've successfully installed your power supply. Next up is the IO shield, which comes with your motherboard. Align it at the back with the audio jacks facing downward. Push it in on all the corners until they click into place and your IO shield is secured. Now set your case aside while we work on our motherboard. Now when taking out your motherboard from the box, make sure you're not touching it directly on the PCB itself and preferably handle it by the sides. If you don't have an anti-static mat or anti-static workspace, then you can just place it on your motherboard box. Let's install our CPU. Remove these two brackets by unscrewing these 4 screws. Now, since this is an AMD CPU, we have to be extra careful in handling it as compared to an Intel CPU. The pins are actually on the CPU itself and not on the CPU socket on your motherboard. If you bend just one pin on your CPU, or if it's an Intel build, the pins on your motherboard, then you're in big trouble. Hold your CPU by the side edges and careful not to touch the IHS or bottom pins directly. Of course, you'll find the triangle on the bottom left corner of your CPU, which you'll align to the one on the CPU socket. Lift up the retention arm on the CPU socket all the way up. Align your CPU to the CPU socket and lower it gently without using any... wag makulit, tumigil ka. Without using any force, and once it's in place, give it a gentle wiggle to make sure it's in securely. Lower the retention arm and you've successfully installed your CPU, which is actually the scariest part about PC building in my opinion. Next up is installing your CPU cooler. Now, like I said, I removed the pre-installed thermal paste on my Wraith Stealth. So to apply thermal paste, there are 2 general ways. One is the dot method, which I'm using by applying the thermal paste the size of a grain of rice. And the other is the line method, which looks like this. Or if you're not sure about your thermal paste application, simply use the spatula that came with your thermal paste to spread the thermal paste evenly on the integrated heat spreader of your CPU. The key here is to just put the right amount. Apply too little, then there's no solid contact between the IHS and your CPU cooler, causing your CPU to overheat. Apply too much and the thermal paste will overflow to the sides of your CPU, getting on the motherboard or in the CPU socket. Now, since I am using the stock AMD cooler, I don't need to use any brackets on it. But of course, if you're using an aftermarket cooler, then just follow the instructions on it to install the appropriate brackets for your platform. And this is the orientation I chose, so the cable for the CPU cooler doesn't dangle on the rest of my components. So all I need to do is align the screws on the mounting plate and screw them tightly into place. Again, in a cross pattern. Now plug in the cable from your CPU cooler to the header on your motherboard labeled CPU fan. This only goes in one way with this small tab as a guide and you're done with your CPU. Next up is memory. So this may vary on your motherboard, but depending on how many memory modules you're using, you need to install them like this: 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if you're using just one memory module, you need to install it on slot 1. Since I have two memory modules, I need to install them on slot 1 and 2. Pull back both tabs on each slot and align your memory to the notches on the slot. They only go in one way, so push it in until it clicks into place and do the same for the other module. And we're done with memory. Now, since I don't have an M.2 drive, I'm not doing this. But if you do have an M.2 drive, then you simply need to unscrew this. Plug in your M.2 drive here and screw it into place. Now, ideally, you'd want to build your PC outside the case first just to make sure that everything is working fine. But I'm not going to do that, so you guys can build your PC outside the case first. So just follow along with my instructions regarding what you need to plug in if you want to do that. Next up is installing your motherboard. The Rakk Haliya already came with a pre-installed motherboard standoffs, which comes with your motherboard or your case. They were originally installed here, 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 and here. But since my specific motherboard is different, I need to move these standoffs here and here. Align your motherboard with the standoffs to the screw holes on your motherboard. An easy way of installing your motherboard is aligning the rear I/O to the I/O shield and using it as a guide. Now, once you've set your motherboard down to the standoff, screw in the screws to your motherboard, securing it into place, and you've successfully installed your motherboard. So according to one of my viewers, this is for installing a custom loop. But since we're not doing that, just remove it for now. Next up is installing our SSDs and hard drives. Now, if you're not using a 2.5-inch drive, then you can just ignore this. Remove the thumb screw holding down the mounting plate, slide out the mounting plate, and screw in your 2.5-inch drive. Make sure that the ports for the SATA connectors are facing downward. Slide it back into place and then the thumb screw. Now, for the drive base at the bottom, there are two thumb screws holding down the drive bay at the bottom of the case. So just unscrew them and you can slide the drive bay from your case. Now, I'm going to install two hard drives on this. Take note that you need to install the one at the top first before sliding in the second one at the bottom and screwing that into place. Make sure that the ports for the SATA connectors are facing the back side of the case. After that, just slide the drive bay back into your Haliya and screw them into place. Next up are the SATA data cables that came with your drives or your motherboard. Or maybe you have custom ones. Unfortunately, I need to use an angled cable that I will connect to the SATA header on my motherboard, which you'll see why in a bit. I bought 5 blue SATA data cables but only get to use 2 of them, so just plug them into your drives and they only go in one way into your drives. Route them to the front aligned to the motherboard SATA headers. Now, since I'm using an SSD as my boot drive, I'm going to plug that into the first header. And next are the second and third drives. Now, notice that I'm plugging in the angled end of the SATA data cable on the third SATA header. That's because my graphics card is actually hitting the connector if it's a regular one. So I think this is a design flaw on Gigabyte's part. I wish they angled the SATA header so no matter how big or beefy your graphics card is, it wouldn't pose as a problem. Especially if you're going for a crossfire setup in which the second graphics card will hit the first and second SATA headers. Moving on, after that we need to give power to our storage drives. So find the SATA power connectors on your power supply and plug them into our 3 drives. These only go in one way too. Next up are the 24-pin and 4 or 8-pin power connectors from our power supply, which will plug into our motherboard. Now, I need to route my 24-pin to the middle grommet, aligning it to the 24-pin plug on my motherboard. And next up is the 4 or 8-pin. Since my CPU needs an 8-pin power connector, I need to combine 2 4-pins for this. But if your motherboard only has a 4-pin plug, then obviously just use a single 4-pin. I need to route that to the top right corner of the back. Now just plug in the 24-pin and 4 or 8-pin power connectors to the plugs on your motherboard. And these only go in one way, so just plug them in, pushing it until they click or once they're flush and securely connected to your motherboard. There is a small RGB hub installed on the Rakk Haliya which connects to the front LED button and the front LED strip. You can remove this and plug it into the RGB hub of the Rakk Pro so you can power and sync the front LED strip with the Rakk Pro. But since I only have one SATA power connector left, I won't be able to use this since I'm using it for the RGB hub of the Rakk Pro. Next up is our front panel connectors, which you'll find dangling from your case. We need to connect these to the appropriate pins on our motherboard so that we can use the power and reset buttons of our case, and front panel USB connectors and audio jacks. We need to route these on these two grommets just below our motherboard. Now, these may be intimidating to first-time builders, but they're fairly simple to plug in. So I recorded plugging these in outside of the case so I can better show you where to plug them. First off are these small plugs which are labeled power switch, reset switch, hard drive LEDs, and power LEDs. So plug this into the ones with the corresponding headers on our motherboard. The power and reset switches doesn't require a specific orientation for positive and negative, but you do need to follow the ones with the hard drive LEDs and power LEDs. So make sure they're plugged in securely. And this is a good place to check if your PC isn't booting. Maybe you plug in the power switch to a different header. Next up are the front panel USB and audio connectors, which only go in one way on your motherboard since one pin is missing on both of them. Same goes if you have a front panel USB 3.0 connector. So not too hard, right? And lastly is the piece de resistance, our graphics card. First is remove the PCIe slot covers on your motherboard. I kind of made a mistake here, so I removed the first, second, and third cover, while I only needed to remove the second and third cover because of my motherboard. So take note. Now if your motherboard has multiple PCIe slots, you want to install your graphics card to the topmost slot. Pull back the tab on the PCIe slot and align the notch on your graphics card to the one on the PCIe slot, and push and plug your graphics card until it clicks into place. Screw in your card into place so it doesn't sag. Now since my 1660 Super requires a single 8-pin power connector, I need to go grab my 8-pin power connector from my power supply. Route it to the front and plug it into my graphics card. And bam, let's eat. Get it? Cause I said earlier, piece de resistance? No? Okay. And we're actually pretty much done with our build. Last thing to do are the case fans. But before that, tidy up a bit at the back and cable manage a little. Now, I'm not an expert in cable management, so I'll just leave links to videos about cable management. Let's install a Rakk Pro. Now, normally we need just two case fans, one intake and one exhaust. But since the kit comes with three 120mm fans, we're going to install two intake fans. Now, the fans of the Maris Pro doesn't have an indicator for the direction of airflow. So the indicator for the direction of airflow is this side where the motors are and this side with the support brackets. So the direction of airflow will be like this. Now for the intake, we need to install them like this. Screw them in with the included screws in the box, and you don't necessarily need to screw all four corners, just 2 screws diagonally is enough. And for the exhaust, we need to install them like this. Route the cable from the exhaust to the top left slot of the case and the 2 intakes to the grommets. For the RGB hub, you need to plug in the 4-pin data cable in the box to the one labeled data on the hub. This only goes in one way. At the other end of the cable, we need to plug in this 4-pin to the system fan header on our motherboard. I don't really know what to do with these other two, to be honest, so I just left them hanging. Get it? And this is where you'll be plugging in the case fans and the connector for the RGB strip at the case. The case fans have 6 pins, so you can't connect them to your motherboard directly. They only go in one way and plug them in until they click into place. Route the 4-pin connector to the top right slot at the back and plug it in the system fan header of your motherboard. Lastly, plug in the SATA power cable from your power supply to the power cable of the RGB hub and you're good to go. I don't know where to place the RGB hub since it doesn't have mounting brackets, so I'm just going to put it here for now. Cable manage a little bit more. Put back the side panels of your case. Now time to test out if your PC actually boots. Get a mouse, keyboard, monitor, LAN cable, and plug them in. Now, I'm also not an expert when it comes to display technology, but you guys can just correct me if I'm wrong. If you have a monitor that supports NVIDIA's G-Sync and you have an NVIDIA graphics card, you need to use the DisplayPort, which is this one. And if you have a monitor that supports AMD's FreeSync and you have an AMD graphics card, you can either use HDMI or DisplayPort. And you can use DVI if you don't have any other choice. Take note that DVI doesn't support pass-through for audio. Plug your display cable in your graphics card to your monitor. plug the power cable of your power supply and plug that into your outlet. In my case, I'm using an AVR for my system and monitor. Turn on the switch on your power supply and let's see if our PC actually boots. Press the power button. So yeah, I'm currently experiencing some technical difficulties with my case fans, which are the Rakk Pro. But don't worry guys, as the instructions I said for installing the Rakk Pro were actually right. Again, just currently experiencing some technical difficulties with it. So temporarily, I installed my old case fans along with the included 120mm exhaust fan at the back. So these type of things just happen when it comes to PC building, and you just have to face that. And my PC is actually working 100% fine just with the case fans again. So I'll get that sorted out very soon. So for now, I'll show you guys how to install Windows, which is the last step when it comes to PC building. So go ahead and plug in the bootable flash drive that you made beforehand, which contains the OS of your choice. In my case, which is Windows 10. Now go ahead and turn on your PC. Now in my case, I need to continually mash F12 to go into the boot menu settings since I have a Gigabyte motherboard. Now that we're in the boot menu, all we have to do now is just select the bootable flash drive that you made. In my case, it's the SanDisk. And yeah, here all we have to do really is press next, install, accept, click next, install Windows only. Create a new partition with the boot drive of your choice. In my case, it's drive 0, which is my SSD. So after that, all you have to do is install the appropriate drivers for your motherboard, including your graphics card. So you can just search that. And this is how the included LED strip at the top of the Rakk Haliya looks. And you can use the LED button now to cycle through the different lighting and lighting effects. So yeah, I guess congratulations to everyone who followed through the build guide. And I'm quite happy with how this turned out, disregarding what happened to the Rakk Pro. But again, I'll get that sorted out very soon. So yeah, this is my PC now. As you can see, the RGB on the memory, very nice. And regarding my graphics card, so I can only get it to light up in white, unfortunately. So you can customize the LEDs on the palette GTX 1660 Super Gaming Pro OC. So this is what it looked like on my first time building it. Yeah, maybe I'll give you guys an update once I've sorted out with the Rakk Pro. So yeah, and I'm just really happy with this upgrade. This is, I think, one of the most significant things that I bought, especially considering that I was able to buy everything here with my own money, with the money that I worked hard for. But of course, shout out to Rakk for providing me with their Rakk Haliya and their Rakk Pro. Again, I'll get that sorted out soon. And of course, guys, belated Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. So, and yeah, I just want to take this opportunity to thank everyone who has supported the channel, my subscribers, viewers, to every company that has supported the channel. Thank you very much. Maraming salamat po. And hoping to get more opportunities and blessings in 2020. So I'm just really thankful again for everyone. Of course, special mention to my employer. So he is a great boss and he has helped me out a lot. So yeah, and just to every one of you who has subscribed, liked my videos, shared it, use my Lazada affiliate link. Ang laking tulong sa akin nun, guys. You don't know how much it helps me out. And yeah, if I forgot to say anything regarding the build, then I'll just leave it in the description of this video. And yeah, just thank you to everyone. And I was actually hoping to hit 10k subs by the end of 2019, but obviously that's not possible right now since we're currently at 6.5. But nevertheless, we're still making progress, which is a good thing. And yeah, hoping to become successful on YouTube one day. Yeah. So belated Merry Christmas again to everyone and a Happy New Year. Of course, leave a like if you did dislike if you feel like you have to. Consider subscribing and turn on notifications to be updated on my latest videos. And of course, as always, bookmark and use my Lazada affiliate link if you're buying at Lazada. Donate to my PayPal also to support the channel. Like my Facebook page and follow me on Twitter for other updates and announcements. Thanks for watching and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace!